I mean, she's sweet with us. She's sweet with people.
Now, how many fights would you say you've had between them?
In 2 years, well, at the beginning, we probably had about, in the first couple of months, maybe about, 5 or 6.
Were they major ones?
Well, not
little tussles, or?
They're pretty major in that they were, they were.
But the last 2 years, there's only been 2 fights, maybe.
Okay, good.
Every year.
Yeah.
Like once a year with other people around or something.
Oh, what's it usually triggered by?
People involved.
Yeah, there's always other people involved.
Excitement and stuff?
Yeah.
Or, okay.
Well, last time our nephew was watching, he's lying on the floor with some food.
That'll happen.
Whatever, and all
He was petting both of them, and he said he attacked her, and she wouldn't let go of her, and there were 2 big guys. They're pretty big guys, and it took them about a minute to get her off.
Yeah.
But so since then, I will let her meet, and I know this is tough too. Let her meet dogs on the street that when we're walking. Certain dogs she's okay with. Like she'll meet, like a little fox terrier, a friend of ours dog. She's fine.
And Callie's great with meeting any dog. She's nice to it. The little black one's a little bit more aggressive.
But they're kind of it's a strange team because, they will, I'd be very hesitant to have both of them in a dog park together because I think they would both try to mix it up with another dog.
Definitely.
Like if she got into it,
they're kind of a team if they.
Yeah, they're a team.
I'm sure. Yeah. So just as far as the interactions with other dogs and stuff like that is concerned, first and foremost, I'm just taking a wild guess between the 2 of them. Like they seem pretty neutral to each other, which is actually good, right? I think a lot of the issues you've ran into up until this point really have come from like resources and stuff like you were saying. Like even like my dogs, like if I had food on me and I'm like laying down, like petting both of them and stuff, like they probably won't fight each other, but like that's a really tense situation for dogs. You know what I mean? So I have some big rules as far as like, I would say dog training in general and behavioral issues is 50% like training the dog, right? And then 50% training the humans, because there's certain things that like we that we do with them or don't do with them that can really kind of set us back in certain areas or create certain problems and stuff like that, right? So just understanding how to interact with them and how to live with them in certain areas so you don't run into those problems. The fighting, if you've only had like 1 fight a year in the last 2 years, I'm less concerned about that, right? That's good, right? Obviously, we want it to be 0, but that's pretty good. So, as far as the interactions with other dogs, obviously we're going to work on socialization skills with them and things like that. We're going to make sure that they're able to hang out and interact with groups of dogs. But there's same deal. There's situations that I don't put my dogs in for certain reasons. So dog parks, huge no-no for me. And not necessarily because I don't trust my dogs, right? Like I know my dogs are social. I know I could take them places. But the problem is 2 things. One, at the dog park, you don't know the other dogs there, right? So if there's another dog that's getting pushy or getting aggressive in some way, shape, or form, or whatever it may be towards them, there's no central authority figure. You know what I mean? So like there's nobody there to say, like when we're socializing a group of dogs, we're able to say, you're getting too pushy, knock it off. You're getting too pushy, knock it off, so on, so on. When you're dealing with a group of strangers and a group of dogs that you don't know, can't really do that. You know what I mean? So because of that, it's a free-for-all for the dogs. They're making all the decisions on their own, so on, right? So because of that, I don't put my dogs in those situations, right? I want to make sure all social situations, the way that we don't have fights with dogs is by the dogs realizing we're there to advocate for them.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm there to make sure you don't get too stressed out. I'm there to make sure you don't get too stressed out. Nobody's bullying each other. Everybody's safe and happy. You know what I mean? So there's plenty of other options as far as socialization with the other dogs that aren't dog parks, right? Structured doggy daycares, if you have friends that have dogs that you know and trust, things like that, right? But the dog parks is going to be one of the ones where I'm going to say is probably going to be a no-no just in general. Just for the safety of them, right? They'd probably be fine there, but like I would say at least 75 to 80% of my clients have had dogs who have been either like, had a really bad experience at a dog park or gotten attacked really badly by a dog at a dog park. And it's like, that happens one time, like you're setting yourself way back. Right. So like I don't want to put my dogs in that situation. You know what I mean? So that's just kind of a big one with the dog parks and stuff. Same kind of concept with the on-leash greetings, and the reason why she may do well with them versus her right, is because of the fact that, like, obviously I'm sure we're dealing with two very different dogs here as far as their temperaments and what they like, what they don't like. If, you know, we've had issues with her because of the fact that, say, she's insecure around other dogs or whatever it may be, right? On-leash greetings are really, really restrictive for dogs. So if you think about it, a typical social situation, dogs are able to move around. If they get nervous of something, they can move away, this and that. Even though she's on a 4 or 6 foot leash or whatever it may be, that leash, she knows she's on it, right? So she feels kind of trapped in this bubble. Yeah. So dogs always have two options, fight or flight, right? If she gets stressed out and feels like she can't get away because she feels tension on the leash or whatever it may be, it's going to increase the odds of her having a reaction in those situations, right? So same concept, I like to save the social situations for like true, like healthy social introductions where dogs can interact and express themselves a little bit more freely, right? Kind of just going down the list a little bit more, obviously play stay, not a problem. We do a basic foundation of on and off leash obedience with the dogs while they're here, so they'd be learning duration work with bed stays, they'd be learning duration work with down stays, off leash recalls, obviously, on and off leash healing.
What do you think though that they learn to listen to you, but to us we're like, hey.
So the big thing is we have, you know, 4 different trainers that are hands-on with the dogs every day, and male, female, tall, short, right? So they get used to working with a group of people as opposed to just one single person. And the big thing is it's less about teaching specific obedience commands, and it's more about teaching communication in general, right? So we're establishing a clear language for the dogs, right? We have the ability to tell them yes, we have the ability to tell them no, and we have the ability to train in cues, right? So different verbal commands and stuff like that. Once we have that language established, anybody realistically should be able to take over at that point as long as they understand the language, right? And that's the reason why our board and train programs include 12 months of follow-up support on the back end, is because we want to make sure that we spend as much time as we need to teaching you guys that language.
That guy did it like a negative, that we were up to like 60 or 70 and we zapped them regularly, where this guy said it's not a zap, it's like hey.
Exactly. So there's,
she'll do pretty good with that.
Yeah, and that's the way that we condition in the e-collar. So there's 2 types of ways to utilize the e-collar. One is a reinforcement and the second is a punishment. Initially when we do the teaching process of it, we're using what's referred to as negative reinforcement, which a lot of people think is the big zap, which actually isn't the case. So the idea of negative reinforcement is you're removing something from the equation in order to reinforce a behavior. So say place, right, when you're trying to get them on place, if you're tap, tap, tapping, and then they get on and the tapping stops, that stopping of the tapping is reinforcing. So technically it should elicit a positive response out of the dog in those situations. Correct, right? Once we have that taught, we switch to what's referred to as avoidance training, which is where instead of giving the tap, tap, taps to get them onto it, we would tell them place. If they didn't do it, it would be no tap, but it would be at a lower, like it's not gonna be like 60 or something. It's the same level range, whatever's motivating to the dog. The only difference is they're avoiding that initial correction by just doing the command in the first place, right? So those are the 2 stages of teaching it, and then we condition it all in with food and everything also. So we use a lot of like actual positive reinforcement in the process as well. And my one was bad initially about she would come and try to steal his bowl after, right? Can't do that, right? Same deal. And that just comes down to like dogs will do what we allow them to do. So like I'm not going to band-aid it and just feed them in separate rooms. I'm going to keep feeding them there, but I'm going to make sure I communicate clearly that I don't want my one dog to do that. You know what I mean? And that's all part of just leadership in general with multiple dogs and making sure we don't run into fights, is them understanding we're able to influence their behavior like that, right? If they're doing something we don't want them to do, we have to know that we have some degree of control over that situation still. You know, so like they want to take their dog to somewhere, or we'll hear people like, oh, I boarded my dog some place, right? They stayed in a big kennel, and you know, I got them back and they were just an anxious mess. And the problem was, yeah, they had more space there, right? They had a large kennel that they could stay in, but they weren't thinking, right? They were just an autopilot panicking the entire time. Because we keep their brain active the whole time, they don't have the time to be like, oh, mom and dad left me, what's going on, right? They're thinking the whole time, so they kind of they adjust very well, and like I said, they wind up having a ton of fun.